you in a minute. But first, before I do that, I'd like to welcome members of the Homeside team and also participants who've now come through the study. It's a 3-year study. I'll say more about that in a minute. And we welcome tonight some participants who've been involved in the study who've come to share their stories. So first of all, if we just go around and introduce ourselves. Janice and Derek, I'll start with you.
Oh, hello, I'm Janice Birch. We live in Wiltshire, and this is my husband, Derek, who has Alzheimer's, and we took part in the scheme.
Great, we'll come back. We're looking forward to having a discussion with you during the evening. And Sue, Jerry and Mark, hello, welcome.
Hello. Hi Helen, hello. Yeah, so I'm Susan, that's my mum Geraldine and my husband Mark, and we're from Bedfordshire, and we've been taking part in the music study.
Great, welcome, and thank you so much for coming to talk with us tonight. And then Caroline, welcome.
Hi, my name is Caroline Bone. I'm by background an occupational therapist, and I'm working as a reading interventionist as part of the Homeside study.
Great, welcome. And Ming, Dr. Ming Su. Okay, Jonathan, do you want to go first, maybe?
Thank you, Helen. Yes, I'm Jonathan. I'm one of the clinical trial managers. Dr. Ming Hung Su is also one of the clinical trial managers for the study. And yeah, we've been with this project for some time now. And we're involved in different aspects of it. Apart from the clinical trial management, we're also the assessors, and we'll be talking a bit about that today, about what it's like to do that and what we had to do to go online.
Yes, especially moving online. Ming, did you want to add anything? Because Jonathan and Ming are working together, sharing that role. So we'll come back to you. And Jodie, hi.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Jodie Bloska, and I'm a music therapist, and I'm working on this project as both a music interventionist, so delivering the music part of the music intervention, and also as a research assistant on the project as well.
Great, thank you. And we have a wider team as well. When I talk through the study, I'll explain about the different countries involved, but in our UK team, we also have other reading interventionists, radiographer Yvette Winard, and physiotherapist Lisa Claydon, and an occupational therapist starting in April, Jennifer Wemborn, and also Sarah Crabtree, who's one of the music therapists working on the study. And I've probably missed some people out, especially our public engagement group, who are going to join us at the BAMP conference, or one of them will, but I know some of you are in the audience. So it's a big team, and we've got some people volunteering to be on this roundtable tonight. And so what we're aiming to do is just, I'm going to give an overview. There'll be researchers here and people living with dementia and their families, and also students and others. So hopefully there'll be something for everyone. And I'm going to just start by giving an overview of the study, which is, it's a home-based family caregiver delivered music and reading study, looking into how particularly music and reading help people living with dementia. It's a randomised controlled trial, and it's working across 5 countries. So it's led from the University of Melbourne in Australia by one of our colleagues, Fisty Baker. And this is a group of us, you can see on the slide, from 5 different countries in the UK, Germany, Poland and Norway, who prior to the study beginning were involved in working with people living with dementia, and very curious and wanting to find out more about how music therapy works. and also see what the effects and benefits are for people. So we're evaluating what was going to be a face-to-face, home-based training for carers working with their loved one at home, living with dementia. The idea being, which you'll hear much more about, that then through the training, which is now online, people would work together for half an hour a day through reading or through music. And because it's a randomised controlled trial, before people agree to come, they are randomised to either not having either reading or music, or having reading or having the music intervention. And it's funded, and we're very grateful to the Alzheimer's Society for funding in the UK. We've had ethical approval obtained through Anglia Ruskin University and through IRAS, the NHS Research Ethics Committee, and anything that's shared tonight has full ethical permission and agreement. So I think many of you will know the importance of why we're particularly focusing on dementia. There's an estimated 670,000 unpaid primary carers of people with dementia in the UK, sort of looking after people with dementia. And we particularly thought that it would be important to have some input for caregivers as well as for people living with dementia. And I'm going to go through this quite quickly because obviously you're here, colleagues and others tonight. I'm mainly supervising and setting up the study and overseeing it, whereas I want to get to the point where you can talk to us about what it's actually been like. We don't have the full statistical results and outcomes until probably the end of June, the end of 2022 or even 2023. But we have this wonderful opportunity to see what the experiences are like as we've got so far into the study. So one of the main areas that we're looking at is to minimize some of the difficult behavioural and psychological symptoms that some people experience, and also to increase quality of life and well-being, both for the caregiver and person living with dementia, and then also to increase the quality of the relationship. And we, in addition to what you'll hear about tonight, there's a cohort of 8 or 9 PhD students carrying out different sort of spin-off projects, looking at some other areas as well. For example, looking at the differences between the quality and the type of experiences in the different countries, because there are quite a lot of cultural differences between those experiences. We're aiming to recruit 495 dyads, which is 99 per country. And so far we've recruited 60 couples, 60 dyads in the UK. So we are over halfway through. And here is the description of why people might be involved in the study. And I'll just pause so you could read that slide. And again, inclusively wanting to look at people with many different experiences of living with dementia. So that last part of the slide is describing the different diagnoses. And for those of you that are interested, we may hear more about this from Ming and Jonathan, who are undertaking the assessments. We're using some questionnaires. And so we've written here about the scores, and some of you will be interested in that and others maybe not so much. This is a diagram of the journey through the study. And I'll just show you this. It's very small, but people come into the study and there are some first discussions to do baseline pre-test measures to make sure that they do fulfill the criteria. And again, we're going to hear, you know, how that's gone for some of the people here tonight. And then people would be randomly allocated. So I'm the person who I press a button in a computer system, which is called RedCap, and it's gathering the data. And in fact, there's an automatic randomization that happens. So none of us have any choice. And this is a real issue in an RCT trial. And we're coming back to that point to ask you how that's been. It's a 3-arm trial, as you know. So I'm not going to say any more about the interventions because that's part of the roundtable, but just to say that these are some of the outcome measures. So because I mentioned before of the areas that we're looking at, we're actually delivering the outcome measures at the beginning and then at the 12-week point and then 3 months later, so that we're also looking at after the training stops, which it does at 12 weeks, whether there's a continued effect or not in all these different areas. And I can come back to that slide if people are interested. And then also, because we want to gain the narrative from you and the people who are part of the study, there are semi-structured interviews where people are able to discuss their experience, and we'll hear more about that tonight. And also there are diaries, which again we might hear more about, that people keep right the way through about their experiences. And this is the purpose of the diaries, also to gain adherence and to look, and we've got ways that we hope we'll be looking at all the different experiences across the 495 couples at the end. And that is an overview. I think we now want to move on to the important part of the discussion. So we've got now I'm going to just ask some questions. So I think Janice and Derek, if I come to you first, and you've just heard that overview. I wanted to ask you about your experiences of joining the study and why you decided to participate.
Do you want me to say?
Yeah.
Well, we read about the study online. Derek's already taken part in a study in Oxford about his side of having Alzheimer's, and I just thought it would be nice if I could do something from my side to maybe give me some insight in how I could help Derek, and to give him different experiences. But also, if I could share my experiences with others, it might also be beneficial to other people that are in the same position as me.
Sure, thank you. Did you want to add anything, either of you, Derek or?
I think it's a very good way of getting information across, and more information then makes a better picture of what's going on. Yeah. So I was quite happy to take part in this, and you know, in just in case somebody else may benefit from this experience.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So moving on to Sue, Jerry, and Mark, I'm going to ask you the same question. What made you decide to participate? Because some people we approached decided not to, and you all decided to take part.
Yeah. Well, once Mum had a diagnosis from the doctor, we were put in contact with some different groups. And one of the groups we got in contact with was the Alzheimer's Society. And they did a singing group in a local town to us. And we used to take Mum to the singing group, and she really enjoyed it. And there were some forms around, and we took one home. And then one of the students came along to one of the sessions, and I picked up another form. And this time we thought, right, we'll fill it in. So we filled the form in. Basically, we just enjoy music, and it benefits mum because mum's quite passive and she's got Alzheimer's dementia. But when the music comes on or when she sings, she's like, you know, like singing mum back. So I did it for her benefit and mine, really.
And what we also wanted to do, we noticed that there's a change in Jerry when there's music around. We wanted to actually try to develop that from our own perspective so that we could use the music usefully rather than just having it on.
Yes. So I'll also just move on to the next question. Thank you. I know we're going to come back to your experience, and Jerry, you might want to say more too. But of course, because it's a randomised controlled trial, this is the question I said I was going to ask. But, you know, how did you feel about that, in that you might not have had this, you didn't know what the allocation was going to be?
The randomisation, we didn't mind what we did. So we were happy to be any part of it. So we're glad with what happened, but we would have been happy with anything, really.
We've noticed that that's been an experience for most couples, which I don't know if moving online made a difference to that, but thank you. Okay. Can I ask you the same question, Janice and Derek?
Yeah, well, Derek likes music, so we were thinking of, or hoping that we might have the music side because that's familiar to us. But we actually got the reading, and it was like, okay, we can go with this. So we took the bull by the horns and sort of took part and proceeded. And to be perfectly honest, we're really, really glad we had the reading, because music was part of our life anyway. Reading together was something new to us. And we have got so much out of it that, in a way, if it wasn't random, we wouldn't have had further experience to enhance our lives, really. How do you feel?
Yeah, that sums it up, I think.
Thank you. I think I would say, from my point of view as well, being a music therapist, that I've learned the most enormous amount actually about the reading intervention, and I think this is going to give a lot of more interesting ways of working. And yeah, I didn't say that my role also has been supervising, so listening to the interventionist, both the reading interventionist and the music therapist. We meet together and share stories from the work, which participants have given consent for us to do that. And so I think it, you know, just to say it's been an incredible experience for all of us. Is there anything to add about that at the moment? Otherwise, I think we'll move on to Ming and Jonathan. So you introduced yourself at the beginning, but I've said that we moved the whole project online because of the pandemic, and Jonathan and Ming are particularly going to consider doing the assessment and sort of collecting data and the experience of moving the whole study online from their point of view now. So I'll hand over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Helen. I'll just share screens. Oh, it's going to get there. It is. Okay, over to you, Ming.
Hello. Sorry about earlier, my internet was not very stable, so hopefully I'll be okay from this point. And yeah, so Jonathan and we are the assessors for the Homeside study in the UK, and we've been conducting video calls online data collection. So we're going to talk about this probably more in depth. So perhaps we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, so Helen has mentioned already. So as you can see, there are a lot of questionnaires we are using to be able to assess the study's outcomes. And as you can see, there are so many. So altogether, I think from our experience that each video call can take up to 2 hours. So it's quite a long time, and later on we will have something to say about this. This can be an issue. So yeah, but we will talk about that later. We can move on to the next one. And like Helen also has mentioned already, so we do the data collection at 3 time points. So after the screening, so we will have established the eligibility for our participants. Then we will move on to the first time point of the data collection as the baseline, and we will wait for a period of 3 months to complete the first follow-up data. And after another period of 3 months, we'll complete the second follow-up data.
Okay, so this is sort of a brief timeline of some important moments within the study. So back in early August of 2019, we began recruitment with the hope of a massive swathe of participants coming in and us, collecting lots of data straight away. But it was pretty slow to start off with. Despite the massive efforts of the whole team of going to various dementia cafes and getting in contact with lots of different types of people from different organisations, and going through, I suppose, what we might call now a traditional approach to recruitment, which is very much face-to-face, using pamphlets and leaflets and attending groups, which is also quite pleasurable for us to do as well, because we meet all of the potential participants and get to sort of meet people in their own environments, really, in the places that they meet. Then in November of 2019, we recruited our first dyad. And there was a fairly gentle pace of recruitment from that point, and we began to build momentum. But then in March of 2020, as pretty much everybody in the world can remember, the pandemic took hold, really, and certainly in the UK, we were advised to stay home. So that meant that our face-to-face interventions and our face-to-face assessments, where we would go into people's homes to hand questionnaires to the caregivers and to sit with both the caregiver and the care recipient, the person with dementia, to complete some of these questions, there are quite a number, because we're interested in so many different aspects of people's lives. We had to move everything online because we couldn't go into their homes. So then we took the next few months to prepare for this online delivery, asking ourselves the question of, is it even possible to do so? We decided that it is possible and we were going to try and do it. So we went through the changes in ethics and met with our international colleagues to work out a way that we could do this. And then in April of 2020, we believe that we managed to find a way of going online and delivering this whole thing online. So that included not only the data collection, but also the 2 interventions, or the 2 training programs that were being delivered had to be thought about how to do this online. And then in December of 2020, we reached half of our target total recruitment for the UK, which I think is a great achievement in this study at this time, given all of the challenges that we faced. So just going back to the literature, so of course we thought of a way, problem solved this problem. But we thought that given the fact that we're a year on, in fact tomorrow, interestingly, we're a year on, and one of the things that that Ming and I wanted to do for this particular presentation was to think about a literature that may have come about in this period of time. So looking at the validity of online assessment. So some of the literature that we looked at, published in the last year, suggests that self-assessment online neuropsychological tests have acceptable construct validity, which means that they still measure what they're supposed to measure with relative accuracy, okay, and that they have similar ecological validity to that of traditional testing. So when compared to face-to-face, they still manage to capture in a kind of a natural way what they are intended to capture, both online and face-to-face, which is good news, particularly for us. We also, it's also been documented in these studies that self-administered online assessments were also acceptable to participants. So the people who were being asked the questions were okay with that and were still happy to participate in research. VTC means video teleconferencing, so online assessment administered. So this particular measure is called the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, and it's a very common cognitive assessment used with adults. And Leboshi et al. Found that compared with face-to-face, it still seemed a viable option, although they admit that their sample was small and further studies with larger samples needed to be undertaken. Okay, over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Jonathan. So yeah, and although there are different methods to collect data remotely, and these methods have always been used in the past, it's only because of COVID, a lot of studies have had to move online to use like Zoom call. That's what we have been using. And so that means that remote data collection is still a relatively young field. And that's why there aren't a lot of review studies or commentaries out there. From the few studies that we looked at, some strengths and limitations of this method have been suggested. So if we're looking at the strengths, obviously, we probably all know it's that convenience and cost effectiveness because we don't need to travel, so the time and the costs are saved. And most importantly, though, the online assessment, basically it's the remote trial study, will allow researchers to recruit participants from areas that are quite remote, so the hard to reach areas. And so that's a major strength. And however, there are limitations like what just happened to me. So, you know, the internet connectivity can be an issue, and some issues are probably from the devices themselves. So we know these issues, and that the issues can prevent researchers from establishing a rapport with the researchers. But one major limitation is around privacy and confidentiality, because it's done virtually. So that means the participants would need to decide which room, which space they would like to use. And if they are living in a shared house, then that means they might have people around them. So we really place this responsibility on the research participants. And if research questions are sensitive, then their answers can be impacted. So this is something we need to consider ethically as well. Now, finally, there are some strategies that have been suggested to navigate these challenges. So one is about training, so doing some role play for the researchers, and so help and set the tone, how to start a video call, that's a method. And secondly, shorter interviews. This is something we will also need to consider in the future, because like our video call, which will last up to 2 hours, can be quite long, and people do tend to feel tired. And another thing is that because it's done virtually, so people probably would tend to forget about their scheduled video calls because they don't need to schedule for their travel time and also arrange for the transportation. So, you know, things can just miss out easily. So studies have suggested that researchers will need to have the perseverance in contacting the participants at different times of the day. So yeah, so that's so far we have learned about. I think some experiences are probably experienced by our participants, but I think that the message from these studies is suggesting that although there are limitations, but remote data collection seem to be the way forward.
Mm. Thank you.
So thank you. And the next.
Thank you. Thank you both. Maybe we can come back to the roundtable and move the slides, because we're able now to, having heard about the literature so far, our participants will be part of new literature and their experiences, and this is our first, apart from meeting over the last couple of weeks, this is our first chance to more formally ask you. Janice, if I come to you and Derek first, I wanted to ask you about your experiences of the data collection with Jonathan or Ming. Whether whatever you'd like to tell us about that, I think would be really interesting and helpful.
Well, because I've worked in education, I'm used to writing reports and doing sort of questionnaires and collections. So I found it actually quite easy. But I can see how it could be quite sort of daunting to some people. But I mean, Caroline and Ming, they both made us feel both relaxed and, fine with the meetings and collecting all the data. So, how did you feel about it? Were you happy to talk to Ming and Caroline over the internet and answer their questions?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. It certainly gave me an insight into Zoom. It was quite a learning curve for me, because I'm quite a technophobe, to actually log on and do it that way. But actually, I think that was another benefit of doing the study. So.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to say one thing here, which is to thank you again for coming and sharing your stories, and that Janice and Derek and Sue, Jerry and Mark have finished the whole study. And that one of the other things about the randomised controlled trial that many of you know is that the people collecting the assessment data, and Ming and Jonathan might say more about this in a minute, they're not meant to know whether people have had the music or the reading or the non-standard care interventions. And as a team, we've managed to hold that. But we can have this discussion now because that process is finished. And it's so that we reduce bias and any sort of ways of making the data come out in particular ways or something like that, that could be skewed by if you know that participants are having music or reading or standard. So that might be something other people want to comment on, but I just felt I wanted to mention it because this is a very open discussion and we can have this discussion at the moment.
I did have to think when I was talking to Ming, I did have to consciously think, don't tell him what I've done.
Yes.
And some of the replies to his questions, I had to think hard of how to word it so that he wasn't aware of what we were doing. Yeah. But it worked. So
yes, thank you. I think people have really helped with that, and yes, it can be. It's one of those issues we might come back to. But Sue, Jerry, and Mark, thank you, Janice and Derek. Sue, Jerry, and Mark, can I ask you the same question? How did you find doing the data collection and the questionnaires part with Ming and Jonathan?
Yeah, we found them straightforward. That's it. Well done, Mum. Yep. Yes, we found them straightforward to do. Thank you very much. With Mark and I have got a science background, so we're used to just data collection and filling in forms and trying to be as accurate as possible. But yeah, you mentioned about not telling Ming who which study we were doing, and it was quite tricksy because I kept wanting to refer to Jodie all the time, and I had to really kind of stop myself and think and be a bit more thoughtful about that. But yeah, so I don't think we let the cat out of the bag. But
no, Ming's shaking his head.
No. Yeah. When Ming was questioning Mum, that all went very smoothly, and it was very sympathetic, and he made it easy. Thank you very much.
Because some of the questions are quite probing and asking quite sensitive personal questions and information, and some people have found that quite hard. Others have found it really important, and it's given them a chance to speak openly. And I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add on this right now.
I think from our perspective, actually answering the questions, because of the way that the study was structured, answering the questions was quite straightforward and quite simple for us to do.
Yeah.
Even the more probing questions, we felt they had a reason for being there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I wondered if Jonathan and Ming, you want to follow up now with and join in the discussion, asking about the experience people have had with your work. Is there anything you wanted to add? We've got time actually. We're doing okay.
Yeah, because I did the data collection with Janice and Derek and Sue, Jerry and Mark. So yeah, I felt that the experience was quite smooth, and I didn't find any difficulties. I mean, during the time when we were on the call, I probably was quite worried about you feeling tired, and so that's why sometimes I would feel, oh, I need to speed up, and hopefully I haven't kind of put you off that way. But I think from both diets, you are all very quick, your answer, because you just know, things really well. You know your life, every aspect. So you just give the answers quite straight away. So that really helped.
Yeah. Thank you. Jonathan, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was thinking about, well, the way that we sort of arrange the meetings, the online meetings for data collection, knowing that it's, as Ming has said, that there's potential for it to be quite tiring. One of the things that we're mindful of is what time of day is good to arrange for this sort of, this 2-hour meeting. Some people are better in the mornings, some people are better in the afternoons, and even in this the lockdown of the pandemic, there's still a routine that you might have, which we have to be aware of, and not try to disrupt too much. So there's still that thinking there as well around how we arrange things around you.
Thank you. Is there anything that any of you, the participants or anyone, wants to add before we move on to the intervention?
I'd just like to say that actually Ming asked us when was best to do these interviews. So he didn't come to us and said, we're logging on at such a particular time. He asked what was best for us. And I also found that actually they were quite long interviews, which was fine for me. But if Derek got tired or needed a break, it was quite nice doing it online, because it meant that Derek could go and have a 5-minute break if necessary and not feel that he had to get up and leave the room. So yeah, I think it worked really well.
Yes. Thank you. So at this point, I'm just going to mention the standard care group. We did hope we didn't have a couple coming forward who've been in the standard care group, so they haven't had the interventions you're about to hear about. But we have offered the interventions at the end of the study, so people have a choice. If they didn't receive one, they have a choice to choose either reading or music after the study, and we felt that was ethical. And also, in addition to the assessment and questionnaire gathering, the intervention team are assigned a standard care couple, and they make phone calls every few weeks just to check in. So although they're not having the intervention, they just have a phone call, because we felt it was really important if people join the study and then they have been in the group where they haven't had the intervention, that there is support. So I don't know, that we may hear more about that in a minute, but if I can now introduce Jodie and Caroline, who are going to speak about the interventions, the delivery, and then have a discussion with the participants. So welcome, Jodie and Caroline.
Hello, just share my screen here for you. All right, thank you, Helen. So yeah, Caroline and I will introduce the interventions that we use in Homeside, and then we'll again go back to Janice and Derek and Sue and Jerry and Mark about their experiences of using these different interventions at home together. So the first thing is that the interventions are designed as an indirect therapy intervention. So within the sessions, the therapist is aiming to share activities, ideas, skills that the participants can use at home together in their daily lives. So this means that the qualified therapist works with the participants in order to enable them and give them confidence in using music or reading activities at home together without the therapist. And so, as we've discussed already, the music intervention is delivered by a music therapist, and the reading intervention is delivered by another allied health professional. So Caroline is an occupational therapist, but we also have physiotherapists on the project as well. So the input from the therapist aims to support the caregiver as well as the recipient, the care recipient themselves, to use music or reading at home together. And within the Homeside study, we asked them to use these activities at home 5 times a week for 30 minutes a time. And that's so we can see if this regular use of these interventions have an impact. So can we show a difference in the outcome measures if they're using these activities on a regular basis? And important to note that they are designed as well to be flexible, and we tailor them to the participants' individual preferences and needs. So it's not a really strict design or playlist or reading list that they have to use, but we tailor it to what they prefer to use. And the aims across the different, across both music and reading are very similar, and essentially just the modality is different that we're using, but our aims remain the same. So we're hoping to provide opportunities for the participants to have shared activities together, to enable opportunities for discussions and reminiscence, to also think about using these modalities, the music or reading, as a way of emotional expression. So whether that's verbal or nonverbal, is there a way of enabling emotional expression? And also thinking about relaxation or stimulation. So thinking about how you might use those activities. And also working together to see if there's ways of using these different activities to support daily activities of living. So getting ready for the morning, having meals, things like that. And also if it can be incorporated into physical exercise and physical activity. And as we've already discussed with the outcome measures, so what we're looking to see is then if this has an effect on these aspects. So can it help with behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia? So if someone's feeling anxious or apathetic or depressed, does it have an impact on that? And also we're looking at whether this can increase quality of life and well-being for both participants, and whether this supports the relationship quality between the couple or pair. So it's not always spousal relationships, but as we know, it could be mother-daughter, it could be friends as well. So can using these activities together support relationship quality? And so these are all of those outcome measures that Ming and Jonathan went through as well that we're collecting, and that shows us if that has an impact on these outcomes.
Okay, so here is the timeline for the dyads who are participating in the study. The participants in the music and the reading intervention each receive 3 training sessions via Zoom at weeks 1, 3, and 6. We allow up to 2 hours for a session, but we do include breaks in that. And ideally, we'd like both the caregiver and the care recipient to be present, but that isn't always possible, or not for all of the session. And if that's the case, then we will gear the session towards the caregiver. who will be usually is the one who is recording the activities that the couple do in the diaries. At the first session, we give an overview of the whole study and spend time discussing the reading or the music preferences of the couple. And that will include their current activities, what they currently enjoy reading or listening to, but also maybe what they've enjoyed doing in the past. They may have played instruments in the past, but not currently, or been in a choir or in a singing group, might have been members of book groups, might have enjoyed magazine subscriptions to publications to do with their work. So we talk about music and reading and get a sense, trying to get a sense of what music or what reading means to the couple. And then we introduce the different reading and music activities that we're going to encourage them to do during the study. And as reading or music interventionists, we'll come to the first session with lots of examples of how they might use the different activities and how they might use them at different times to get different effects. And Jodie and I are going to explain a little bit more about that as we go on. In weeks 3 and 6, we have further training sessions, and the focus of these sessions is more towards the activities that the dyads have already tried. And we encourage them to bring things to the session, tell us about the activities they've tried that have worked, maybe things that have maybe not been successful, and then we have a talk about what they might try going forward. So it's really about exploring the different options for the activities there. Okay. So those are the training sessions, and week 6 again is the same, pretty much the same as week 3, and just keeping the couples on track with carrying on with the activities. So as we've mentioned before, I think we also give follow-up phone calls, which are at weeks 2, 5, 7, 9, and 11. And this is where we check in with the couples to find out how they're getting on with the activities. Are they able to do the activities? We're asking them to do them up to 5 times a week for 30 minutes during the day. Not necessarily 30 minutes in one stretch. It might be 10 minutes on one activity and 15, 20 minutes on another activity. But we talk to them about how they're getting on and how they're getting on recording what they're doing in the diaries that we've provided them with. But we also spend some time talking about their general well-being. And in the last year, we've incorporated questions about the impact of COVID on their health and also on their daily lives or on their routines, how it's affected their contact with others or contact with health providers or with usual other activities that they may usually do. We've mentioned at week 12, we then, over Zoom, do a semi-structured interview about how they found participating in the study. And that's a chance for us to get some qualitative data about what's worked for them, what they found to be the benefits of participating, what have been the challenges, how they found the training. And we do also ask them about whether they think they might carry on using music or reading activities in their day-to-day lives. We then have a gap, and then at week 25, we do another follow-up phone call, which is similar to the previous calls. And that's quite interesting actually to speak to couples that far into the study and find out, yes, whether they're still using music or reading activities. Helen has mentioned the dyads who have been allocated to the standard care group, and they follow the same timeline minus the training sessions. So they will get the fortnightly phone calls. And as she said, we offer at week 25, we offer them the opportunity to have up to 3 music or reading intervention sessions, and we've already got some couples who've been through the 25 weeks who've taken us up on the offer of that, and we've really that feels really important to all of us, that everybody gets some input if they're participating in our study. Okay.
All right, now I'm going to go into a few more details about the music intervention. So essentially, within the training sessions, we discuss and workshop these 4 main activities using music. So singing together, movement to music, playing instruments, and listening to music. So singing together might be, singing in the moment, a song that both of you know really well. It might be, folk tunes and things like that, but it also could be singing along to pre-recorded music or a playlist that you have. And it could be, singing to one another as well, or singing together at the same time. Movement to music might be dancing to music, or it might be just swaying in your chair or tapping your feet, or it might be more targeted things and targeted exercises like doing your chair exercises to music and things like that. And playing instruments. So if you're part of the music intervention in Homeside, we do give you a set of instruments to use for the study. And essentially these are just small handheld percussion instruments to use at home together. And so this just gives another way to access music, as well as another way to interact together using instruments. We do have some musicians who join the study, and they sometimes choose to use their instruments to play together as well, depending on if they're comfortable with that or not. But the main thing is that you don't have to be a musician. They're meant to be, all of these activities are meant to be accessible to non-musicians as well. And then the fourth one is listening to music as well. And that might be for relaxation, or might be invigorating to get up in the morning and things like that. And also thinking about what music we're listening to or singing to or playing to, and thinking about sparking conversations around the music as well, and reminiscence. So another element of the session is thinking about how we select the music. So what music the participants may listen to. And we want to think about their preferences. So we ask them some different questions and things like that, trying to find out different music that might be, what they prefer listening to, but also relevant to their memories and things like that. And we also think about the importance of familiarity. So for instance, one of my couples, they like music from the 60s and 70s and things like that, the Beatles and country and Western music. But they were listening to they were watching a documentary on Vera Lynn one day, and they noticed that they were singing along to every song. They remembered all the lyrics, and it wasn't something that they would say that this is what they listen to or that they prefer, but they grew up with it. So it was really familiar to them. So it was another sort of layer of music that they could use together as well. And then we also discuss musical qualities and different musical elements and how that might relate to not only the specific activities, but thinking about what the aims are of using the activities as well. So for instance, if you're listening to music in the evening to wind down, you might want a gentle, soft song without any sudden changes. However, if you're wanted music to exercise to, you might want something with strong rhythm and a higher tempo, something that's more upbeat. And we also think about melody and lyrics. So is it thinking about repetitive melodies that might be easy to sing along to, as well as the lyrics of the songs, and thinking about are there discussions that you can have around those songs as well. And then another sort of important part of the intervention that I found has been quite important is thinking about how the couples access music. So how can we make this easier for them? Are there ways of showing them things like Spotify and creating playlists, making songs easily accessible so that you have the songs that you like singing together, or for certain activities or for certain moods. So finding ways to make it easy for them to access their music as well. I suppose overall, the music intervention aims to support the participants in using these different musical activities, thinking about when and why they might choose the music, and helping participants feel confident in using these different activities at home together.
Okay. Reading is most often experienced as a solitary pursuit, which we do independently of other people. So at the start of the study, it's been really important to show the couples how it can and does work as a shared activity. So there are a number of activities that we use in the study. The first of which, Jodie, I think is just going to pop up, which is reading aloud. And this is where we're encouraging the caregiver to read to the care recipient. The second activity, shared reading, is where the care recipient may read to the caregiver, or they take turns. So they maybe share a book where they, one reads one chapter, one reads the next. It might be that the care recipient is able to read from memory, maybe telling stories that they told their children, or reciting poems or texts that they remember from school. We've also broadened it out to include word games, and several couples have enjoyed playing either structured games like Scrabble or Boggle or Bananagrams, or unstructured ones where they perhaps use the tiles from Scrabble to make up words or make sentences. Other couples have enjoyed crosswords, word puzzles, other word puzzles, word searches and things. So that's quite a broad area there. And then the final activity is listening to other people read. So this would be a couple either listening to an audio book, or maybe a radio program, a podcast, or even a blog or a YouTube video. So something where they would both be listening to something together. Selecting the reading material has been an interesting for all of us, really. Sometimes the couples have said, oh, we thought you were going to give us a reading list. And then we realized that that wasn't going to work, because what would you know about what we like to read? So what couples have had to sort of negotiate is finding things that they would both like to read. So thinking about their preferences, what sort of things do they usually enjoy reading, and what sort of things could they bear to read with each other. So that's provoked quite a lot of conversation. In terms of familiarity or novelty, some couples have enjoyed rereading books or things that they've read in the past, or going back to something like they have a daily newspaper, so they have been using that as part of their reading that to each other as part of their activity. But other couples have seen this as a really good opportunity to try new things, either learning new things by reading different sorts of books, and I'll talk to Jan and Derek about that in a moment. Also, several couples have found out about podcasts for the first time and have really enjoyed the world that's been opened up to them by using podcasts. In terms of other things that make some text more accessible than others, I think it's really important to think about the format of the text. It's important when you're doing a joint activity, obviously the energy levels and the concentration levels of both the caregiver and the care recipient may flag over time. So starting out to read a really long novel with really long chapters might not be the best activity to choose. So maybe choosing short stories or short articles, or listening to a half-hour podcast rather than an hour-long podcast lends itself better to these activities. In terms of reading and print, thinking about font size and font style can have an impact on somebody's ability to read text. One of my couples were enjoying reading Christmas cards and Christmas letters from their friends, but the care recipient found it difficult to read handwriting, but was able to read typed letters, but not handwritten ones. So that had an impact on them. And the presence of pictures, and particularly with non-fiction text. Several of my couples have really enjoyed looking at lovely coffee table books with lovely big pictures, and that's really helped prompt conversation and been a really nice shared activity together. And digital or print. So some couples have really enjoyed would really enjoy looking things up online or reading the news on their phone or using a Kindle. Other couples very much prefer using printed text, so books, traditional books. Accessing reading material during lockdown has been a challenge for several people or several couples because you can't access libraries, and going to bookshops or charity shops that's really tricky, or has been really tricky, but out of that has come lots of invention and creativity. So couples have said, oh, we've been talking with my daughter about being part of this study, and she's recommended some books, and she's dropped some ones around to us. So people have been sharing their books, which is also really good. Yeah. And then reading lists, like Jodie has said, people making playlists. Several of my couples have said, oh, we've got a list now. We know that when the shops are open, we'll be back looking for books by our favourite author, or we're going to look out for some more books about our our town, because that's what we're interested in. So people, you know, are starting to think about what are the books that they've got most out of. So you see, selecting the material has been something that's taken quite a lot of effort, but a lot of creativity. And I think that's the thing that I've taken away from lots of the couples that I've worked with. They've worked really creatively to find topics and find reading material that they both enjoyed, and it's become a really meaningful and enjoyable experience to share together.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and thank you. And I think it'd be fantastic now. I think you're going to have a discussion with Derek and Sue, Jerry and Mark. You know, we've got this opportunity to hear about your experiences.
Yeah, shall I start off with Sue and Jerry and Mark? So first of all, just overall, what was it like for you to participate in the study and in the music intervention?
Yeah, it was. We all enjoyed it very much. Thank you. It was an unusual way of getting the instruments, because it was the just gone into lockdown, and you kind of just had to drop them halfway down the driveway, and we kind of trundle up and pick up the instrument. So that was quite unusual, but we loved playing the instruments. Thank you very much, didn't we? We did. Yeah. We used music quite a lot anyway. We specifically like doing the Mum always has the radio on to doing her breakfast. We kind of we have a structure to the day, and it was nice just moving on from just listening to the radio and actually singing together. And we made a playlist, didn't we? Yep. We all made a playlist. Mum specifically loved singing hymns, which she got a lot, which she knew the words to. So we just start off the music and away she go. It was magic. We had a violin experience as well, didn't we? Because when we got round to VE Day, we got a whole load of White Cliffs of Dover and everything. And our community did people on their lawns and playing music, and you could hear it all around the village. And that was nice, because we'd go and sit in the back garden and just listen and singing and swaying and doing.
Yeah, you got some live music. It wasn't just listening.
It was live, yeah, kind of live, yeah.
Great.
Socially distanced live.
Yeah.
So yes, have you got any questions, Jerry?
Yeah, I was wondering, Jerry, do you have any favorite activities from doing the music together? Any favorite music activities?
Marching.
What instruments did you like playing the best?
Tambourine.
Yeah, so we had a tambourine, some maracas, a glockenspiel, drumsticks, and sleigh bells. Yes. Oh, that's right. We had the sleigh bells, didn't we? Because we could wrap the sleigh bells around her wrists. So even if she wasn't up to doing the in tune, she could, you know, we were bopping along and she could wave her arms around. That was quite good when we were doing chair activities.
You enjoyed marching as well, didn't you?
Well, one specific thing, because we liked our techie gadgets, we've got a Wii, and within Wii there's a little thing where you can go jogging. Well, we didn't go jogging, but we just went walking. Yeah. So we had strapped them up with the Wii remote, and we had little emoticons on the television screen. We put on the proclaimers, "We can walk 500 miles," and then we was on the spot. We're doing our marching and singing, and yeah, she loved that. She got to the point where she recognised where she was on the screen, because I said, like, under the hill, under the bridge, over the hill, under the bridge, and we're home. Yeah, and then we're home. That's it. So still remembers that. Yeah. So we do that. She loves doing that. Yeah.
Is there? I think you've touched on this a bit, but any specific, I suppose, benefits for you throughout doing the music intervention?
Well, as I mentioned before, Mum's quite passive, so doing the music stuff, you know, really got her bring out her emotions. It's happy, so we could improve her mood, and it was lovely to do something together. I mean, especially during lockdown when we're forced, as it were, together in a house. It was just nice. We come into this room here where we do the Zoomies, and we could just have a space for it, and we'd get our music book out and we'll start singing, and it's lovely to share things, wasn't it? Yeah. Mark would be in charge of the tech, so he'd download the tunes.
And what we also did, we created our own songbook, so that we could actually go to Jerry's favourite songs, but we had all the lyrics in a songbook, so we could put that up on the computer while we were listening to the music, so she could sing along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good thing. It was, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you made use of a lot of different sort of things that you could explore how to use the activities in different ways as well.
Yes,
yeah, we utilised the tech that we had. Our music collection is pretty extensive. It ranges from anything from Vera Lynn through to Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, etc.
Yeah.
So we could actually tie in the sort of mood that Jerry was in. We had music that would actually fit that sort of mood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, we used it in the mornings to get a nice start to the day. But if we needed to kind of chill out in the afternoons, then we could always we like to watch a musical, didn't we? So we like watching musicals. So we sometimes just pop the telly on and put a musical on, and off we go.
Yeah.
So can I ask something, because it's really interesting hearing all that. And would you say, it sounds like you used music before the study, but would you say how did this change your use, if it did, or did it just sort of encourage you to do those things you talked about, like first thing in the morning? And
from my perspective, it actually led me to understand more about the relationship between music and mood.
Okay.
So that rather than just putting on a random selection of music, we could actually structure the music. After the intervention of working with Jodie, we could actually structure the music to fit the type of mood, or even use it to bring Jerry into a better mood than she was in.
That's really interesting. Ming's nodding a lot, because I think, don't know if you want to chip in there. Or Jerry, did you want to say something?
No, just thank you very much.
Oh. It's okay, Jerry.
Yeah.
Thank you all for taking part.
Did you enjoy taking part in doing the singing stuff?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sue, did you want to add anything?
Well, for me, it just added structure. We had more structure in the day, and we just thought a lot more about thought a lot more about what we were doing, because for Mum's benefit and our benefit, really.
Fantastic. Thank you all. I'll hand over to Caroline now to speak to Janice and Derek.
Thank you. So Jan and Derek, so I think I'm going to ask you, Jan, first, what it was like to be part of the study.
I've really enjoyed being part of the study. Initially, we were a bit apprehensive. Reading to each other was something different. You know, I'd often read solitary to myself. Derek would read articles and things to himself. So to read to each other was a new experience for us. But it was a really positive experience. We put everything aside, sat comfortably together, and started reading. Partly we are close, but in a way it brought us closer together because we were concentrating and doing an activity together. When we chose the reading material, we knew reading a novel wasn't going to get us anywhere. We knew it had to be like little short articles. But once we found something that would keep Derek's attention and interested us both, was wonderful. We mainly did sort of local history and books about the area. I did find that books with photographs in actually had a bit more stipulation than just words. And we could extend that because we chose a book of our local area. We read about something, then we went out and we actually saw the architecture that was talked about, or something within the time that was talked about. So we physically went out and did something as well. And then we came back and reread. So it just installed everything. And it, because we'd seen it in life as well as in photograph, it just seemed to condense it for us, didn't it? Which was really good.
What was your favourite thing that you did?
Is that for you or for me?
For you,
Either.
Derek.
For you, Derek.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Well, I think it made me stop and think and to look up and where you were doing the normal 9 to 5 work. I was there looking. I'm sorry, I'm getting an echo. There's no sound at all now.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. That's all right.
Yeah. So you carry on.
Sorry, what were we saying?
You were saying what you enjoyed best about taking part in the study.
Yes, it was. Sorry, I'm hearing myself.
Yeah, Derek, you were saying you're enjoying seeing bits of your town that you'd normally not really noticed, but because you'd read about them, you'd gone out and then seen them, and they make it. I think I remember us talking about it, and you saying it was like a jigsaw puzzle. You read about it, went out and saw it, and then came back and read a bit more about it, and it made sort of sense in a way that you'd not, you'd always been there, but you'd not seen it in that way before.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. It was really interesting because after I worked with you, lots of other people that I've worked with have got interested in local history, and it's been a really good thing. Actually, it's something that sparks a lot of conversation. Not just about what people have read, but then it's prompted conversations with each other, but also with other family members.
Yeah,
well.
I mean, we found that because of lockdown and getting resources, I used family and friends, and they were really interested in the study, and they came up with books and things for us to do. It brought on conversations between other people as much as the two of us, which was really good. And also, one of the other things we really enjoyed was reading to the grandchildren. They live in Ilfracombe, 100 miles away from us. But again, we used technology, and we could read to them and they could read to us. And it just brought back, that cozy family feeling again, even though we weren't together. But it also brought back lots of memories for you, didn't it? Because we were reading about local history, it brought back memories of things that we did as youngsters, because we've always lived around this area, and things that your family used to do. And it was just a really relaxing study to do, which brought us lots of joy, really.
That's great to hear. Really good. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I think we're going to move to more general discussion now, and thank you for sharing so much. And we've still got just under 10 minutes left to open up any comments from anybody on the round table. You may have more things you want to contribute that we haven't asked about, so other things you want to say or sing or tell us about, and also we've got people in the audience who we can't see, who've been invited to ask questions through the Q&A. If you could use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We've got one question, and so Nina and I will field the questions, I think. Jodie, did you want to say something?
I was just going to comment on the fact, I suppose, the moving online part of the study, which I think has worked quite well for this study. I think that because we're sort of handing over some skills and ideas, and it's something home-based that people can use at home together, that it works quite well in this format. I think at times it would be nice to be in person and see people. But I think, yeah, it's nice that it has been something that we've been able to carry on throughout lockdowns and restrictions and all of that.
Yes, thank you. One thing we should also say, and we could put, somebody might have this to hand and we can put it in the chat, is prior to the study, we wrote up the protocol, which is published in the BMJ, in the British Medical Journal online, the protocols, so the handbooks and everything that we developed. And then, but that was before we had your experiences. And so we're also hopefully over the next few months going to work on publications. And I was thinking that it would be great to write about the interventions with participants from the study. You know, we can talk about that later, but it's really incredible to hear these the way it's worked coming alive in your lives, which was behind the study in the first place. So we've got a lot of comments in the chat saying things like, yay for music therapy. Great to hear these experiences from Caroline Halsey, who is chair of the PPI, the Participant Engagement Group, but also saying, using the we with singing and marching, what a great way of using technology. So what you're sharing now is really helping other people in the audience. And there's we've put in the chat now, thank you, Nina, the link to our publication. So we've got 2 questions, maybe more. So is that okay if I open up the questions from the audience and then anyone can jump in, we'll see. The first one is from Diana Roldan. Does this therapy, the reading and the music, has it shown effectiveness on every level of dementia? Have you faced any repetitive situation that becomes an impasse to get results using this therapy? So I suppose that's about, you know, maybe the participants might want to jump in there, or maybe the interventionists, about, are there sometimes times when there are things that can't be, you know, helpful, or yeah. I hope I've understood the question. And this person also says, thanks again for the wonderful research. So would anyone like to? Yes, Jodie, thank you.
I suppose if I'm understanding this correctly as well, I suppose the one thing that we didn't touch on when we talked about the interventions tonight is that we do as well address if there's moments when actually using the activities might be distressing for somebody. So whether that's overstimulation or whether that's recognizing that some of their skills, so maybe they used to play an instrument and that's more difficult for them, or maybe reading has become more difficult. So there's those things that can be quite tricky. And so there's talk around how you manage those different things, but then also finding ways of still using these modalities, whether it's music or reading, still using them, but in a way that's more accessible and things like that. So I suppose, yeah, that is part of what we're trying to do as well. And I suppose finding ways for it to work for everyone, no matter what their needs are, that we can still use these activities.
Thank you, Jodie. Anyone else want to comment before we move on to next question?
I didn't feel there was any pressure. I must admit, we tried several different things, and if something didn't work, we just put it aside and tried something else, or went back to something that did work. So I didn't find any barriers because there was always ways of overcoming it.
Yes, thank you. There's also a question here from Leslie Binning saying, have the participants continued using the interventions after the end of the official study?
Definitely. Yeah, we definitely carry on using it in many different ways. And it's something that we're going to carry on to in the future and include the family in it. So, yeah.
Thank you. Sue, Jerry and Mark, did you want to? I think you have said something about that, but maybe.
Well, we have continued with the music. We continue singing with a singing group online. The Alzheimer Society do a singing group. and also carers in beds do a singing group as well, which we still continue with, and we do armchair dance as well. Now, don't we, Mum?
We do.
Extra little group in there, which is lovely.
But we've actually continued. We have, as Sue said, we have music on pretty much every day now.
Yes.
It's just a way of carrying on and making sure that we keep structure.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's another couple of, I'm sort of moving on because there's lots going on here in the Q&A. Very important question. Given the number of people with no access to the internet, are you considering reaching those under a similar scheme? So, so we had to move online because of the COVID-19 situation. Originally, this was all going to be delivered in people's homes face to face. So there's one or two couples who didn't take part because the internet wasn't strong enough, or they didn't have the facilities. There's one or two couples we said we could provide equipment for if they had the internet but not the equipment. And I think that's something that we're very aware of, that there could be people who can't take part. I'll just answer that because I think that we've talked about this a lot and it is an issue. And Chandra Chapman, who says, is what the participants learned about themselves and their loved ones documented in some way? I can see the information here being really useful for advanced care planning. So I may have addressed that, but I'm wondering whether I could just ask the participants. You've kept the diaries, which must have been a lot of work, and then you went through the semi-structured interviews. So we probably do have a lot of information, but then in my mind, and we've talked about this in the PPI group, there's a way we could all, be writing together in a different way. Because hearing your experiences like this makes me think people might want to contribute further, but you may feel you've already written enough. Do you want to comment, any of the participants, on that?
I think by keeping the diaries, it allowed me to then look back, so that if something didn't work, I could look back to see what did work. So in a way that became part of my care plan. But really, I don't think there was any other anything else I can say about it.
Thank you.
I quite enjoyed doing the diary because I tend to write things down anyway. So it's a good way to remember what worked and what didn't work, as Janice says. That was just very useful looking back. And I think as the study went on, I started to understand more which music helped Mum, especially when it came to reminiscence and her mood. So I thought that was very beneficial.
Thank you. So there's another question here. Perhaps this will be the last one, I think. There's also one from Bob, who's on our PPI group, asking about deterioration. So maybe that, I think some people have experienced, because dementia can be something that deteriorates, but other people have found maybe it's enhanced, the qualities that you are living with. So it's a bit hard to answer that, I think, but to acknowledge that in our experience, I think there have been people and one or two who became ill or, couldn't continue. Not many, but. And then this final one, I'm curious about the additional benefit of the follow-up phone calls for caregivers in both intervention and control groups during lockdown. Any reflections on how they impacted people's lockdown experience? Yes, that's a really good question. And maybe we could finish with that one and see who'd like to jump in. Some of you were doing the phone calls, both the participants and the, Jodie.
I'll just say one of the I just recently finished the phone calls with one couple, and yeah, and actually they were in the intervention, but they did mention having the phone calls just as someone to call and say, how are you doing? And, you know, give them a bit of support saying you're doing well and things like that with the intervention. But just having that checking in, even if it's not, you know, even if we don't talk about the intervention, yeah, having those, it is important to say that that is another form of support, isn't it, that we're providing.
Yes, thank you very much. And there's another comment here I wanted to just share, which says, really admirable how the participants continued to support the study, like you've come here today and you're working with us. Was there, however, any element of dropout over time? So we won't know across the whole study about that. We've recruited 60 dyads, and I think four or five have dropped out, but for a combination of reasons. So a couple, one sadly owing to one of the couple passing away, and then others owing to illness, and one or two who felt it wasn't for them, which I think is really important. So ethically, people can withdraw at any stage, but we haven't had a high, I would say not a high dropout rate. It would be great to carry on discussing, but we have run out of time. We finish at 7, and what happens is we just all disappear. So I also wanted to thank especially Janice and Derek and Sue, Jerry and Mark, and the whole panel, and the audience, and to say that there's a lot of information in the chat, and that some of us will hang around for a few minutes as we leave. And to thank you all very much, and hand over to Nina, who's got some final comments. And thank you, Nina, for taking charge of the technology and everything else.
Thanks, Helen. I just wanted to jump in quickly to say that we have 3 more webinars coming up for the rest of the series, and the next one will be on the 26th of April. We'll have a roundtable where Dr. Alex Street will be chairing a roundtable on neurorehabilitation, and we'll have some of our colleagues from Chiltern Music Therapy and Chroma joining us as well, and talking about their experiences of setting up neurorehab music therapy. So we hope you can come to that. There's a link in your follow-up email to sign up, and you'll also have a survey that pops up when you leave the webinar. So if you can fill that out, we'd really appreciate your feedback. So thank you all very much for coming.
And thank you so much. Sort of do a wave.
Thank you. You can wave, Mum.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for all your hard work. It's definitely been a benefit to us.
Well,
Yes, definitely.
Thanks to you too.
Yeah, thank you all for participating, for joining us.
Problem. Okay, right. Bye.
Yeah, I think so.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.